In Hollywood blockbusters, there often comes a moment where someone high up in the military says, "Wake the president." And at that stage, they scramble to get the president out of the White House and get him to safety. There was a moment like that in 2 Samuel chapter 15. An enemy force was closing in on Jerusalem and King David had to flee. So he left the city, he crossed the Kidron Valley, he ascended the Mount of Olives, and he escaped to safety. 2 Samuel chapter 15 and verse 23 says, "The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by," or passed over. "The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on towards the wilderness." So here was the king, and he is the one who is after the Lord's own heart, David, this miniature portrait of Christ, but now he passes through a valley of deep shadow. The word Kidron is related to words for blackness and mourning. The Kidron Valley was a valley of deadly darkness, and for David to pass through it on the run is to endure a real walk of shame as he leaves Jerusalem and heads towards the Mount of Olives and on to exile. It seems like he might be abdicating his throne forever as he walks through the valley of the shadow of death. So some people contend that David had the Kidron Valley in mind as he wrote Psalm 23 and verse 4. "Even though I walk through the darkest valley," or in the older translations, "through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." And that might be true. He might have had the Kidron Valley in mind, but of course David's life is like a pencil drawing of Christ's life. It's sketched out in advance of what Christ would do. David endures this going through a valley of suffering, and it's a foretaste of Christ's own sufferings. It's Jesus who really did take that great and fearful walk of shame. He entered into the darkness of death itself. And actually John chapter 18 makes a little bit of a deal of the fact that Jesus crossed the Kidron Valley the night before he died and went to the Mount of Olives in order to pray. It's interesting, Jesus seems to be, the night before he dies, he seems to be taking that age-old escape route which David had taken across the Kidron Valley, over the Mount of Olives, and then away to safety. Is that what Jesus is going to do? Would he be like the president, bundled out of harm's way, leaving his post, heading for a safe haven? Amazingly, no. He crosses the Kidron Valley, he ascends the Mount of Olives, but there he stops. There he prays. There he accepts the cup of suffering from his Father. On the Mount of Olives, Jesus awaited arrest so that he might be brought back to Jerusalem and to truly face death's darkest valley. How astonishing to think that the one who never had to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he willingly chose it. And it means this, it means we never pray Psalm 23 alone. We never walk the valley of the shadow alone. The old song had it right, more than they knew. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. Because of Christ, you'll never walk alone.